Hey, welcome to Tabletop Skirmish Games. I'm Lee, and in this video we'll be going through the abilities for the Scions of the Flame using some examples with the miniatures on the Catacombs battlefield. The Scions of the Flame are a great warband, and if you can get them up close and make those attacks and take advantage of their superior strength, then they can be a really fierce warband to take on in close combat. Their abilities really reflect this, and I hope that this video will give you a good idea about the Scions of the Flame and how the abilities help them on the battlefield. So if you're looking to choose them as a warband for your next game, then hopefully this video is going to help you out. I'm doing this kind of video for all the different warbands, so as I get all the miniatures painted up and ready for the battlefield, I'll do a video like this and go through all their abilities too. And if you want to check out the previous one I did, that was for the K-Knight Shadowstalkers, and they come with the Scions of the Flame in the Catacombs box set. So they're really good enemies to go off against each other, and I think their abilities are a real good contrast, and it makes them really fun to play against. Okay, let's get started. So our first ability for the Scions of the Flame is a double, and that's called Fiery Might, and anyone with the warband rune mark can use this ability. So you can see here we've got the warband rune mark on the ability card and also the rune mark on the fighter type cards. And so this double is called Fiery Might, and until the end of this fighter's activation, add half the value of this ability, rounding up, to the strength characteristics of attack actions made by this fighter that have a range characteristic of 3 or less. So here, with the exception of the Inferno priest, and one of her weapons has a range of 5, all the other fighters here have a range of 3 or less, so they can certainly make use of this ability. And even the Inferno priest, if she chooses to use her weapon that's got a range of 2. The Blazing Lord and the Brazen Champion, they already come with a strength 5, so they're not really going to need this ability when going up against the K-Knight Shadowstalkers, where their toughness is quite low, but they would certainly need it if you're going to take them on against some of the Age of Sigmar ones, like the Iron Jaws, for example, who are pretty tough. So this is going to really help them compete and stay on the same level with a warband like the Iron Jaws. The fighters that are really going to benefit from this are the Fireborn, the Immolator, and the Initiate with the Brazier weapon, because they have a strength 4. So taking them up to strength 5, certainly against the K-Knight Shadowstalkers again, that's really going to give them the edge, and that's going to allow them to mostly be able to hit on 3 pluses. So that's really going to give, well, over a third of the warband that extra strength there, and that's really going to help. And it adds to the toughness of them overall as well. Then that leaves the Initiate with the Morning Star, the Flameburst Pot, all the hooked axe, and also the Inferno Priest and the second Fireborn with Sunblade. They've all got a strength 3, so they're almost competing on a level and sometimes below the toughness of the K-Knight Shadowstalkers. So having this double ability is going to help them and to kind of get above them, or at least certainly match them on strength and toughness. And again, it's going to add to the strength overall of this warband. I haven't used this ability enough with playing the Scions so far, and I really need to use it a lot more. And it's really good because it kind of counts for the whole of the fighter's activation. So if they have 2 actions and they choose to use both actions as attack actions, then they can take advantage of this double Fiery Might ability for both of those attack actions. So it makes them really strong. Yeah, I really should use this a lot more. With most abilities, you want to get like high numbers, not with all, but with most. But I think with this one, because you only want to add like 1 or 2 to that strength characteristic, then you can really get away with having a low number here. So even if you had like a 1, 2 or 3, you're certainly going to get that strength up and be above the toughness of your opponent. And now on to our second ability for Scions of the Flame, which is another double called Beheading Strike. And for this one, you need the Warband Faction rune mark and also the Brute rune mark. And for this one, the Beheading Strike, add half the value of this ability, rounding up, to the damage points allocated by critical hits from the next attack action made by this fighter, this activation that has a range characteristic of 3 or less. So this ability is just for our Blazing Lord and Brazen Champion, so they're the ones that are going to benefit from this ability. Both of these fighters already deal 6 on a critical hit, so if you're getting some high rolls there with that value for the ability, if you've got double 5 or double 6, you're going to be adding another 3 wounds there, so that'll take that critical hit up to 9, which is huge. So you really want to be taking advantage of some high value dice rolls for this ability here. But it's just important to note that for this one, to add half the value of the ability to the damage points of critical hits, it's only critical hits, so not normal hits, and it's for the next attack action, so it would only be for one attack action. So for example, if you made 2 attack actions during one activation, you wouldn't be able to use this ability for both of those. It would only be for the next attack action. And the third ability is another double, and this is called Throw Firebomb, and this is going to be for fighters who have both the Warband Faction rune mark and the Trapper rune mark. There are 2 fighters with the Trapper rune mark, and that's the Initiate with Brazier Weapon and Flameburst Pot, and also the Initiate with Flameburst Pot. So you'll have 2 fighters that can take advantage of this ability. So Throw Firebomb. Pick a visible enemy fighter within 6 inches of this fighter and roll 2 dice. For each 4 to 5, allocate 1 damage point to that fighter. For each 6, allocate a number of damage points to that fighter equal to the value of this ability. So with the majority of the Scions of the Flame being up close and having weapons mostly between 1 or 2 in range, this is a nice occasion where you can really choose a range weapon to deal some damage within 6 inches of the fighter rolling the dice. So that's really good and a nice ability there. So again, this is one where you want it to be high and you're really looking to get 6s here if you can. But if you do, you get a 5 or 6 for the value of this ability, then that's going to be some serious damage from a low value fighter as well. With these initiates being 55 to 65 points, being able to put out a fair amount of damage like that is pretty good. The next ability is a triple called Inferno, and for this the fighter needs to have the Faction Warband rune mark and the Destroyer rune mark. And there's only one fighter that can benefit from this ability, and that's our Immolator here, and he's pretty tough character all round, and with this triple Inferno, this really helps him deal some damage to many fighters around him, and being that he's on fire, that's going to spread and hit some of the enemy as he runs through them on a rampage. For the Inferno, roll 1 dice for each visible enemy fighter within 3 inches of this fighter. On a 4 to 5, allocate 1 damage point to the fighter being rolled for. On a 6, allocate a number of damage points to the fighter being rolled for equal to the value of this ability. So far playing the Immolator and using this Inferno triple, I found it hasn't been that destructive at all, but that's down mostly to the dice rolls. But you know, if you can get in range of maybe 4 of enemy fighters here, and then you can roll 1 dice for each. I mean, you've got a 50-50 chance of giving them some damage, but on a 4 to 5, it's only 1 damage point. But on a 6, it is going to deal quite a lot of damage points. But the chances of getting that 6 when you're only rolling 1 dice, you know, it's pretty high. So, in my experience, I've just found it hasn't been that effective. Now on to the 5th ability, which is a triple called Ignited Fervor. And for this, the fighter needs to have the Faction Warband rune mark and the Leader rune mark. So this one's only available to the Blazing Lord, and he's going to be the only fighter that can benefit from this ability. For the Ignited Fervor, until the end of the battle round, add 1 to the attack's characteristics of attack actions that have a range characteristic of 3 or less made by friendly fighters while they are within 6 inches of this fighter. I found I haven't been in a position to use this ability yet in the games I've played so far, but I've really got to try it, because I think if you can get your Blazing Lord close to 2 or 3 of his other fighters, then this is really going to start piling the pressure on the enemy. And that range characteristic of 3 or less for those friendly fighters, most of them for the Scions of the Flame do come within that, so that's perfect. But they can also be within 6 inches of the Blazing Lord, so that gives quite a large range around him there to inflict some damage. And being that these players the fighters should be really going in together up close and using their strength against the enemy, I think this would be a really effective ability that I've really got to start using. Right, now we're on to the final ability for the Scions of the Flame, and this one's a quad called Engulf in Flames. And for this ability, the fighter needs to have the faction warband rune mark and also the mystic rune mark. So this one's only going to be available to the Inferno priest. Use Engulf in Flames, pick a visible enemy fighter within 3 inches of this fighter and roll 6 dice. For each 2+, allocate a number of damage points to that fighter equal to half the value of this ability, rounding up. In addition, for each 6, roll 1 extra dice as above, and so on. So for me, this is the most powerful ability that come with the Scions of the Flame, and if you can get the Inferno Priest close to one of the enemy's leaders or one of the fighters with a high number of wounds, and with this quad you've got like a quad 5 or even a quad 4, 5 or 6, so you've got a high value there, you can do an immense amount of damage to the enemy with this. You are limited to picking just one visible enemy fighter within 3 inches of the Inferno Priest, but this really is like an assassination move, and using this ability, roll in those 6 dice, and you only need a 2+ to allocate the damage points. You're really going to hit them, and you are going to deal some damage with this ability, unless you're really unlucky. And on top of all that, it's even got that explosive dice roll, so if you get a 6, you can roll an extra dice and just keep going. So if you roll a 6, roll that extra dice, that's a 6, then you can go again and again and just keep piling on those damage points. So a seriously good ability, and one that you got to use as often as possible with this Inferno Priest, and it's great to take out those big point players. That rounds up all the specific abilities for the Scions of the Flame, and you can see they really are mostly geared towards up close fighting, with the exception of that firebomb and the Engulf in Flames, and really all about adding to the attack and the strength characteristic of the fighters, and using your leader to empower his friendly fighters and giving them extra characteristics for their attacks. So you're really piling on the pressure and really taking out the enemy quite quickly if you get in a good position and can surround them with enough of your Scions of the Flame. Where you'll find the Scions lack in a little bit of movement, so all the fighters are on a movement of 4, so it's pretty average, but it stops them from jumping over those pits, and it also puts them in a position of crossing the bridges and having to roll for them to be weakened or to collapse. So don't forget, you've also got the universal abilities you can use, and one I found I've used a lot is the double rush, where you can add 1 to the move characteristic of this fighter until the end of their activation. And then using that double rush just gets them across the bridge without having to test it, and also helps them jump the pit and get in on the action a lot quicker. But I think in one of the battle reports I did, in battle report number 2, I used this too much, where really I should have focused on moving them in and then using the double fiery might and that beheading strike to do more damage that way. So don't overuse that double rush, I found in my experience, but really focus on the fiery might a lot more. Let me know what you think about the Scions of the Flame and their abilities. What's your favourite one? What have you found to be the most effective? And what tactics do you like to use when you're playing them? I'd love to hear your thoughts. The next video I've got coming out, I'll do either the Corvus Cabal or the Legions of Nagash. So in the comments below, just let me know which ones you'd like to see first, and I'll make that video as the next one for part of this ability series. I'll put some links in the description below where you can pick up the Scions of the Flame as a warband or as the Catacombs box set. There'll be affiliate links to Element Games, but they won't cost you anything extra. In fact, you can save up to 20% there on all your Warhammer products. And for every sale made through an affiliate link, I'll get a small commission, and that's going to help me develop the channel. And I really appreciate that support. So thanks so much for that. I hope this video was helpful and gave you a good insight into the Scions of the Flame and what their abilities are capable of. And thanks so much for watching. Please like if you like it, subscribe for more videos like this, and don't forget to hit the notification bell to join me next time on Tabletop Skirmish Games.